Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast, and welcome to your AEW Dynamite post-show, man. A lot to talk about. Obviously, this is the first show, well, not the first show, but the show right before the new year, and obviously I hope you guys had a happy new year as well. But this was the last show for AEW Dynamite leading into the new year. We start off with MJF. MJF comes out to the ring, grabs a microphone. MJF says that Swerve is the franchise of AEW. He also says that Samoa Joe is a Samoan submission machine. And then MJF says that Paige is the main character. MJF is standing in the ring. Looks like there's a presentation, if you will, or a title that he's going to present to the fans. And MJF unveils none other than the Triple B title. MJF then tells the roster to step up or get stepped on. After that, MJF is quickly interrupted by Kenny Omega. Omega is on the Titantron. Omega says that he is approaching the end of his career, but he says that he would like to be champion again. It seems as if Omega wants a title shot against MJF. MJF then mocks Omega. Paige is here as well as Swerve. Security then rush after Paige and Swerve. MJF then calls Paige and Swerve losers and walks out of the ring. Paige and Swerve then attack security trying to get to MJF, but Paige says that he is going to take his title back. Swerve says that he's on the hunt for MJF. The Ops then are shown on the Titantron with Samoa Joe, Hook, and Powerhouse Hobbs. Samoa Joe then interrupts Paige and Swerve, says that he deserves his rematch. Joe says that he wants to send the Ops after Paige and Swerve. And Swerve says, well, hell, you know what? Why the hell not? We'll do a match against the Ops in a no disqualification lights out match. Some interesting stuff there between Paige and Swerve and the Ops. Moving on from that, we got a Tornado Tag Team matchup where it is Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and Tony Storm taking on the likes of the Death Riders. The match itself, though, was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between both teams with the Death Riders keeping the pace of the match. Strong hits an ankle slam in the middle of the ring, followed by Orange Cassidy hitting an orange punch on Daniel Garcia. Cassidy then hits a Stundog Millionaire in the ring. Yuta then attacks Orange Cassidy. This allowed Claudio Castagnoli to hit an uppercut on Orange Cassidy. Pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are the Death Riders. Hats off to the Death Riders for getting the win in this matchup. And moving on from that, we got Bandito taking on the Beast Mortos. I thought this was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Bandito and Mortos, with Bandito keeping the pace of the match. Mortos then hits a lariat on Bandito, but Bandito hits his signature 21 plex on the Beast Mortos. Pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Bandito. And it looks like Bandito has his sights set on MJF and the Triple B. Moving on from that, we got an impromptu matchup. It is Lee Johnson taking on Brody King. Lee Johnson quickly attacks Brody King, tries to get the advantage on King, but the match itself was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Lee Johnson and Brody King, with King keeping the pace of the match. King then hits a Cannonball Senton on Lee Johnson into the corner, followed by Brody King hitting the finish. Pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Brody King. Hats off to Brody King for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a Continental Championship title eliminator matchup where it is Josh Alexander taking on Jon Moxley. I actually thought this was a really good match. Back and forth matchup between Alexander and Moxley, with Alexander keeping the pace of the match. Alexander and Moxley both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Alexander going after Moxley's ankle. Moxley then gets out of that, applies a chokehold on Alexander, but Alexander breaks the hold with an ankle lock, and that hold is broken. Moxley then quickly hits a cutter on Alexander for a near fall. Alexander then gets up trying to injure Moxley's leg. Alexander then hits a knee drop on Moxley's injured leg. But Moxley somehow gets up, tries to get some more offense in by applying another choke on Alexander, but the hold is broken. Moxley then applies another choke on Alexander. Referee sounds for the bell, and your winner of the match is Jon Moxley. After the match, you can see Shelton Benjamin and MVP standing at the entrance ramp staring down Jon Moxley. And it looks like we're going to get Shelton Benjamin versus Jon Moxley. Some interesting stuff there between Shelton Benjamin, MVP, and Jon Moxley. Moving on from that, we have an AEW National Championship matchup where it is Ricochet defending the AEW National title against Jack Perry. The match itself, I thought, was an okay match. Back and forth matchup between Perry and Ricochet, with Perry trying to keep the pace of the match. The Gates of Agony, who were ringside, attack Luchasaurus, who was also ringside during this match. Ricochet then hits a Northern Lights suplex into a brainbuster on Perry in the middle of the ring, followed by Ricochet hitting a shooting star press on Perry for a near fall. Perry gets up, tries to get some offense in by hitting a diving DDT on Ricochet for a near fall, but Ricochet ends up hitting his signature Spirit Gun on Jack Perry, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and still AEW National Champion is Ricochet. After the match, Ricochet hits another Spirit Gun on Jack Perry, and the Gates of Agony end up attacking Luchasaurus. Some interesting stuff there between Jack Perry and Ricochet. Moving on from that, we go into our main event of AEW's Dynamite. It is Willow Nightingale taking on Mercedes Moné for the TBS title. The match itself, I thought, was a good match, man. Back and forth matchup between Willow and Mercedes, with Moné keeping the pace of the match. Willow hits a senton, followed by Willow hitting another senton off the apron, taking out Moné on the outside. Willow then hits a powerbomb on Moné for a near fall, but Willow ends up hitting another powerbomb on Moné, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match and new TBS champion is Willow Nightingale. Hats off to Willow Nightingale for getting the win in that matchup, and after the match, she is celebrating in the ring with Chris Statlander. Couple of things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to AEW Dynamite before I get the hell up out of here. Number one, was it a solid show? It was a decent show. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a horrible show, to say the least. I mean, obviously the big elephant in the room was Mercedes Moné. Obviously, Moné losing the TBS title. It seems as if Moné is slowly starting to lose her titles. The 12 titles that she had once held, she's slowly starting to lose these titles, whether it's the Ring of Honor Television Championship. Now she lost the TBS title. She lost against Chris Statlander for the AEW World Championship. It seems as if Moné is starting to, have a downslide here, where she's going to start losing these titles. The CMLL Women's Championship, she's slowly going to start losing these titles. So, am I all for it? Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, man, I've given my opinion on Moné. I think the whole title collector thing was just a waste of time. It really didn't do much for AEW in the aspects of actually uplifting the female roster, because at the end of the day, every single match that Moné had, she was ultimately squashing the female roster on AEW. And to be honest with you, I think this is something where it needs to happen. It's well overdue for Moné to start losing these titles. And honestly, for what it's worth, I think at this point, when it pertains to Mercedes Moné, I don't think a lot of people actually give a damn anymore, to be honest with you. I mean, my standpoint with Moné has been the same since day one. I think Moné and her tenure in AEW, she is trying to do whatever she can to raise her stock, so when her contract comes up, she's going to use that for leverage with, obviously, Tony Khan, but it seems as if that Moné is trying to do whatever she can to get back in the good graces of WWE. And she's trying to raise her stock within the confines of AEW, so when her contract comes up, she might be able to not only get the money that she's looking for in WWE, but also get the opportunity to wrestle once again in WWE. So that's my opinion about Mercedes Moné. I also want to talk about Jon Moxley. It seems as if Jon Moxley, whether people like it or not, looks like he's turning babyface. Just from him winning the Continental Classic Championship, just from the reaction that he got from the match he had against Josh Alexander, it seems as if the fans are really pushing this narrative where Moxley at one time was a heel. We're talking Moxley was being a heel for over a year. To now, we get past the Continental Classic Tournament, and he has won the Continental Classic Tournament. The fans are pretty much basically making Jon Moxley turn babyface, even though that he's pretty much the leader, if you will, of the Death Riders, which is a heel stable. So I don't know where Jon Moxley's going with this as far as a possible babyface turn. I mean, my thing is that I thought, and I told you guys when I did my World's End review, I thought for sure that, the Death Riders were going to beat the hell out of Jon Moxley in the middle of that ring at World's End, because literally him being a babyface goes against everything that the Death Riders are about. The Death Riders are trying to clean house. They're trying to separate the weak from the strong, or the weak-minded, if you will, and try to get pretty much these talents away from AEW. And now Jon Moxley's at the forefront with praising the talent that was in the Continental Classic Tournament, and the fans are supporting Jon Moxley. So I don't know if this is something that AEW and the powers that be are willing to entertain, the fact that maybe Jon Moxley might turn babyface. I gave multiple pitches as far as the Death Riders are concerned. I mean, I think Jon Moxley should step away from the Death Riders. You can still keep Claudio, Yuta, Daniel Garcia, Marina Shafir a part of the Death Riders, and maybe have someone else come in to facilitate being the leader of the Death Riders. And yes, I did mention Karrion Kross. There could be other names that could come in and be the new leader for the likes of a Death Rider stable. I think Jon Moxley right now, a lot of people probably are anticipating him possibly turning babyface just from the fan reaction that he's been getting ever since he won the Continental Classic tournament. So, again, it's going to be very telling to see what they do with Jon Moxley, especially this year in 2026. So, it's going to be very telling. Then we also get MJF. MJF starts off tonight. He has a segment in the middle of the ring, pretty much unveiling the new Triple B championship that he won in that Fatal 4-Way matchup at World's End. So he has a Triple B back. But the one thing that shocked me, and I think shocked a lot of people, was the interruption by none other than Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega made a statement towards MJF that he is coming after the AEW World Championship. He also made comments about that he knows that his career is coming to an end. It's very telling because, at one time there was reports that were coming out for AEW that Kenny Omega, or at least the powers that be, being Tony Khan and the AEW staff, kind of felt as if they didn't want to take the risk of Kenny Omega having singles matches with the risk of him possibly getting injured again or having to take some significant time off. And that's why they put Kenny Omega and teamed him back up with Matt and Nick Jackson. Now, there was also rumors of speculation that the Young Bucks ended up getting injured right before World's End, and that's why they weren't medically cleared to compete at this year's World's End. So I don't know how long the Young Bucks are out. I don't know if it's pure storyline. I don't know if they're actually legitimately hurt, but I do know they weren't at World's End. And now, seemingly, it seems as if that Kenny Omega is going to go back on a singles run and try to climb the ladder to once again try to become AEW World Champion. Am I against it? No, I'm not. I think Kenny Omega, despite what a lot of people might think about Kenny Omega, in my opinion about Kenny Omega, I still think Omega can put on good matches, number one. Number two, I think Kenny Omega, in my opinion, still feels as that he has a lot more to prove as far as what he can do in that squared circle before his time has come to an end. And he's no longer either able to compete or no longer willing to compete in a professional wrestling ring. And I think when he cut that promo against MJF on Dynamite, to me, this seemed as if that he has something that he wants to prove, not only to the fans but to himself, to a point where can he compete at a top level in AEW, where the talent base right now in AEW is very good, it's very high paced, it's very in your face, it's almost like a New Japan Strong style. The way a lot of these competitors compete in the confines of AEW. We're talking of the likes of a Kyle Fletcher. We're also talking of the likes of a Konosuke Takeshita. These are two top talents within the confines of AEW that go from 0 to 60, and they are in there to whip your ass. And the question that I would have for Omega is, can Omega really stand toe with the likes of a Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita and compete at that high level anymore? And I think that's something where when Omega did cut that promo, it did have, my brain turning around to the point where, is this something where he feels as if he has to prove something, not only to the fans, but to himself, to let the fans know that Kenny Omega is still there. It's just not, it hasn't been presented to the fans on AEW for quite some time. You could say the same thing about Okada, where Okada came into AEW, and obviously Okada's wrestling style has been vastly different than what you've seen Okada do in the confines of a New Japan Pro Wrestling. Okada's style has slowed down a hell of a lot than what he's done in New Japan. And you can say the same thing about Kenny Omega. Both those guys had to turn it down because they're getting to a point where they're getting up in age and they can't compete as fast or as strong as they once did when they were in the confines of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So again, it's interesting. But you also had the likes of Swerve, Page, and even Samoa Joe that are still trying to, that are glamoring for another opportunity at MJF's world title. So again, it's going to be very telling to see how 2026 plays out, especially in the main event scene. And a lot of people have concern about the main event scene because there is a lot of injuries that are still hindering the main event scene. And a lot of people are tired of seeing Swerve and Page or Joe in the conversation for an AEW world title. Now, for me personally, big fan of Swerve, big fan of Page, Samoa Joe. He's great in his own right, but I can understand the, I don't know the proper word to say here when I say this, but the ongoing notion that we're going to get the same three guys that are going to be competing for the AEW World Title. And that's what I mean by the main event scene in AEW right now. It's very, very murky at this point because, again, injuries are hindering this company. You have Jay White out, Adam Cole. We don't know if he's going to return. We have Keith Lee still out. Wardlow is still out. I mean, you have names that are out there that are still injured. You also have tag team injuries as well. I mean, look at the Guns. Right now, it's Austin Gunn and Juice Robinson teaming up to go after the AEW tag team titles, which they were unsuccessful in when they went up against FTR at World's End. Copeland and Cage are also out. These are also two big-time names for this company. In a story that is still yet to be finished between the likes of Copeland and Cage and FTR. So that's something that they also need to bring back and entertain. Even other people have mentioned free agents going into 2026. I mean, if I was AEW and they could do something where they could facilitate adding more free agents, yeah, absolutely. Because, unfortunately, you're getting the same main event scene. You're not building for the future. There has to be, and some people could say, well, if they bring other stars in, it's also going to hurt, the roster that it is right now. Yeah, I'm not sitting here saying that you guys are wrong, but again, I'm not against having some new life to AEW in the aspect of bringing in some other talent to kind of not only revamp the brand, but get a little bit more excitement around AEW. Because right now, I mean, what more can you want? I mean, obviously they're not building for the future. They're not building for AEW for the next 5-10 years. They're building for AEW for the here and now, because we don't know how long AEW is going to be around. We don't know the future of AEW with the likes of Netflix trying to possibly acquire Warner Brothers Discovery, which is pretty much the home base of an AEW, being that they're on TBS and TNT. So again, it does raise some eyebrows if this deal does go through. It's going to take some time if it does go through, but how long AEW really has with the likes of Time Warner. We know, I think they're in a 2-year contract with them remaining, but we don't know what's going to happen with AEW after the next 2 years, or if there even is going to be an AEW. So that's the biggest question going into 2026 is how are they going to facilitate not only bringing fans back into the product, but making the product once again exciting. You hear Tony Khan saying that they're not really focused or fixated on telling story and that what they're doing right now is working. Well, no offense, bud. It's not. It's not. There's fans that have been with AEW since day one, like myself, that are still patiently waiting for a proper storyline. And that's all we need. I mean, you can't... And the problem is that AEW is going to run into this issue as far as not telling stories or building up future stars, where we're going to constantly keep running back the same goddamn matches. I mean, you can look at the Samoa Joe and Adam Page situation when there was nobody around. Swerve was still on the shelf at the time. Will Ospreay's out. Jay White's out. There was no one else to facilitate being a top contender for Adam Page's AEW World Title, so they put Samoa Joe in that situation because they had nobody else. And not only did they do a Samoa Joe match once, but they ran it back twice, back-to-back pay-per-views. So you need story, you need some intrigue, because some people are getting sick and tired of seeing the same goddamn matches, and that Tony Khan still wants us to fork out $50 to watch basically the same goddamn match that we had the prior month, and now we're getting the same goddamn match this month. You can't keep just saying, oh, well, we're putting on banger matches and expect the fans to pay $50 a pop to watch your product. We need some story. We need some intrigue. You need to start building for the future with the likes of Kyle Fletcher, Takeshita, Darby Allin. These are the guys that can, move this company into another direction for the future, where AEW is still going to be around and in a comfortable spot. Not a spot where you're relying on veterans that are in their 50s, like a Bobby Lashley or, I'm not saying Jon Moxley's 50, but a Jon Moxley or a Bobby Lashley. You need some younger talent that you can build around to build the likes of this company. I mean, you look at even WWE with NXT. Now they're having call-ups coming to either Raw or SmackDown with the likes of possibly Jordan Grace, Obafemi, Trick Williams. These are younger talents that have been developing in NXT, most specifically Trick Williams and Obafemi, that are going to come on to the main roster and change the landscape and change the dynamic of a Monday Night Raw and a Friday Night SmackDown. This is something that AEW possibly needs to entertain with their younger talent, like a Kyle Fletcher, Takeshita, Darby Allin, Kevin Knight, Speedball Mike Bailey, Josh Alexander, Mascara Dorada, if he still wants to work with the confines of AEW. Bandito. I think Bandito had a great 2025, in my opinion. He has an AEW World Title match here in the next few weeks. I mean, what more can you ask for? You just had to start building for the future. You can't just keep building for the now, because we don't know how long we don't know if there even is going to be a future for this company. Especially with what they're doing now. You're not building future stars. You're not building storylines or intrigue, or you're completely overlapping a story that you once had and said to hell with it. Prime example, where in the hell is Adam Copeland and Christian Cage? Where the hell are they? We have not seen the likes of an Adam Copeland or Christian Cage since All Out, and I believe it was September that we saw both Copeland and Cage. When they had, I believe All Out was in Canada. So where the hell was Copeland and Cage? And why? I mean, here we are now in January. All Out was in September. You know what I mean? We're already 3 months past, and we have not seen the likes of a Copeland or a Christian Cage. Why not? And unfortunately, at the spot we're in AEW, it's hard for these talents to take time off, because when they take time off or whatever, it's hurting the company because they're not building for the future. They're not building storylines to get the fans intrigued with AEW's product. That's the problem. That is the problem. That is the number one issue right now for AEW, and it's creative. If they had decent storylines, this show would be a hell of a lot different than what it is now. And I feel as if, in some ways, Tony Khan and the powers that be are just lazy and just don't want to do it. Tony Khan is booking AEW for Tony Khan. He's putting on matches on his weekly episodic television, whether it's a Dynamite episode or Collision, and these matches are thrown together or put together solely because Tony Khan wants to see these matches. He doesn't give a shit what the fans think or what the fans want to see. He is booking these matches and these shows solely for Tony Khan. He doesn't give a shit about anybody else, and it's ultimately hurting the company. And like I said, with AEW as of now, even in the past 2 years, if you see something that you like with the show, you kind of have to take it and just ride off to the sunset with it. Because if not, you're going to be hating watching this product week in and week out. And that's why I said earlier, I think a week ago, that you're going to have content creators that are going to be complaining and whining about AEW's product because they just can't find something that they like. So rather than trying to find something within the confines of the show that you like, you want to sit there and complain and whine about the show just to sit there and bitch and complain. You know what I mean? If you don't like the show, or if it's something where that's all you seemingly want to do is just bitch and complain about the product, then maybe you need to move on to a different show. Maybe AEW is not for you. I gave you guys an example. There's some companies out there that are just no longer for me anymore. NWA, just not for me anymore. I want to give TNA a chance, and I told you guys that I want to do TNA's debut episode on AMC. But I don't know if I'm going to enjoy TNA's product or if it's something where it's one and done. I don't know. I've been, through the highs and lows of pro wrestling as far as, covering other wrestling companies. United Wrestling Network Primetime Live was fucking horrible. I couldn't stand it. The guy that was running that show there, I don't know if it was 100% Billy Corgan or the one guy that was doing commentary for NWA Power, but the show was horrible, and it was a slap in the face to professional wrestling. And I don't know if it was Billy Corgan or the other guy that was helping Billy Corgan with this shit. United Wrestling Network Primetime Live was a slap in the face to the fans of pro wrestling and fans of the NWA product. It was absolutely horrible. And not for nothing, I understand NWA, from what I understand, has a TV deal with Roku. But not for nothing, I thought they had a better chance sticking around with the YouTube space when NWA Power was on Tuesday nights at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. And the show ran for about an hour. Hell, they could have bumped it up to 2 hours and put on NWA Power week in and week out on YouTube. They were getting content. They were getting content out. They were getting the audience back and intrigued with NWA. They had good matches. They had a decent roster. When they were on YouTube, they had the likes of Ricky Starks, Zeke Dice, Tim Storm, Eli Drake, Eddie Kingston. Scott Steiner made an appearance. Nick Aldis was their World Heavyweight Champion. They had Tom Latimer. You know what I mean? Like, they had a decent roster. Camille was the NWA Women's Champion for a long time. So they had a decent roster, and then everything fell apart for not only just NWA, but the rest of the talent. they ended up leaving, and NWA really hasn't been the same. Yes, they are still around, and yes, they are on Roku channel, and they're trying to do what they can to survive as a company that's basically, for a while, kind of independent because they had no TV deal. So, again, it's the same thing with AEW. I mean, a lot of people can argue, and I wouldn't disagree with you at all when you say this, that TNA might surpass what AEW has been doing. And honestly, you're not going to get an argument out of me. Right now, they have they're about to get into their new home with AMC. They have a really good, solid roster with Santana. They have, obviously working with NXT. I think Trick Williams now is on the main roster, so you might not see him on NXT. Frankie Kazarian is the current TNA World Champion, from what I understand. So things are in motion for TNA. They got Leon Slater as well, another really good talent. Javon Evans versus Leon Slater. The match they just had was absolutely awesome. So they have the talent, bro. And I think there is that argument where TNA might become the number 2 pro wrestling company in the States, surpassing what AEW is doing. And not for nothing, it's crazy. AEW has the finances. They have a TV rights deal. They got 2 damn shows on a weekly episodic television. They got Dynamite and they have Collision, Wednesday and Saturdays. They have pay-per-views where they're going to Wembley Stadium and shit like that. I mean, it's crazy to think that, TNA, once again, is in the conversation to be the number 2 wrestling company in the nation, in the States. I mean, if you go back in time when TNA first came around, I mean, again, they were also a little bit, in a way, I wouldn't say on the heels of WWE, but it got a lot of people's attention because the amount of talent that was going over to TNA. This was also a time where WCW was closing their doors. So a lot of that WCW talent that either opted not to go to WWE or didn't have an opportunity to go to WWE ended up getting the opportunity to work in TNA, hence Sting. Sting was trying to do everything in his power not to work in the confines of a WWE. So when WCW got bought out by Vince in WWE, he ended up packing his shit and going to TNA and had a really decent, solid career in TNA. Randy Savage even made an appearance in TNA. Hell, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, X-Pac, Hogan, Flair. Mick Foley even at one time was on TNA television. Christian Cage revamped his career when he worked for TNA. And then they had homegrown talent like AJ Styles, who made a name for himself within the confines of TNA. And look where AJ Styles is now. You know what I mean? They had Samoa Joe. They had Christopher Daniels, the Fallen Angel. They had Sabin and Shelley. Great tag team. Hell, even the Young Bucks at one time wrestled for TNA. They had a solid roster, man. LAX, Santana Ortiz, Penta even wrestled for them. They had a solid roster throughout the duration of TNA's history. Absolutely. You know what I mean? But at the same, even the X division was insane. So again, this is something where it's going to be a very interesting year for AEW with the likes of now that TNA has a TV deal starting here now, probably within a couple weeks, where they're making their debut on AMC's network. So it's going to be something where, and again, TNA is going to be live on AMC on Thursday nights, a day after Dynamite. So, again, this is something where maybe it is kind of putting the pressure on AEW. It's going to shake shit up for them a little bit, and they need that, bro. They need to figure shit out. I'm not sitting here, and again, I'll be the first one to say, well, they need to go back to what brought them to the dance. Maybe. But if you're not going to go back to what brought you to the dance, and obviously, clearly, what you're doing now is not working, and we need to fix that. Because clearly there's an issue. Attendance is down. TV, ratings are down. Ticket sales are also down. You need to figure something else out. Because clearly what you're doing right now is not working. And it's not you even getting a chance to facilitate you guys selling out a 10, 11,000 seat arena on your weekly episodic television like you guys were doing when you first had the likes of Cody Rhodes or CM Punk. You need to get back to what brought you to the dance. You need to get back to telling story and intrigue for your product so the fans can get invested, especially if you're a new fan of professional wrestling. You want to see obviously what's going over in AEW if you get the opportunity to do so, and you want to see what's going on with them. Give the fans some intrigue. Give the fans a reason to constantly keep coming back week in and week out to watch your weekly episodic television. And if you can't do that, obviously those fans are going to leave and go somewhere else. And like I said, now that we have WWE with Raw and SmackDown, NXT, now we also have TNA also having their own show on weekly episodic television for AMC. So now wrestling fans have the option not only to watch Raw, SmackDown, NXT, but now they'll also get the opportunity to also watch TNA on a weekly basis, with them being on AMC. So again, TNA is either on the heels of AEW or they might surpass what AEW is doing in 2026. So it's going to be a very interesting year to see what AEW does this year. And hopefully, AEW and Tony Khan can figure shit out, and maybe AEW can be the talk of the town again. Maybe in professional wrestling. But with that being said, I hope you guys are out there staying safe, be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.